Welcome back to another episode of Crystal's Hot Seat. And here's your host.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this edition of The Hot Seat with me, Crystal Whitman. Joining us in the hot seat today is Rod Demery, former Shreveport police detective and now host of his show, Murder Chose Me. Welcome to the hot seat. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being back in the hot seat with us. You came back, so apparently it wasn't too hot for you.
No. It was nice.
All right, so second season of the show. Man, congrats to you on that. It must feel really good.
Yeah, it does. It really does. It's amazing. I would have never, 2 years ago, I would have never guessed anything like this would happen.
Wow. I like how you say it all started when you were 3. Talk about that for me.
Yeah, well, it did. I was being interviewed about this show, and during the interview I said I didn't choose murder chose me because the guy asked me why I worked murder. Yeah. And, I'm Southern Baptist, my grandfather's a deacon, and, growing up in church, I knew that, there was a scripture that I always remember, before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you, and I kind of knew that was my destiny. Okay. And when my mother was murdered, it created a situation that I couldn't learn in college or at the police academy, but I could relate to people, and, God's timing was perfect.
You relate to victims.
Victims,
okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and God's timing was perfect in that because I was not quite old enough to have a real vivid memory of my mother's murder, but I was able to see my grandmother, my grandmother's grief and, my grandfather's worry. Shortly after that, well, not shortly after that, but, I think I was in my 20s, I just got back from Japan, and my brother got arrested for murder. Wow. So the fact that he was my brother, and I could relate to homicide suspects because I knew at some point they were somebody's brother, somebody's son, or whatever. So I was able to take the crime and the criminal and separate the two. So I think that worked out really well for me.
Well, speaking of, yeah.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I was, it's just, I think that's the way all things, work together. So.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty cool to see the show and see like parts of Shreveport in the show as well. Just talk about that. How did you guys create the vision for the show? We want to talk about what makes season 2 different from the first season.
Okay, when they started it, when we started the show, it was more about. I personally think it was really intimate. It kind of told a story about me and my backstory or whatever. Okay. This season is a little different because it's really focused on the cases that I work. But shooting the show for me is pretty easy, because it's like being in court or doing a news interview when somebody asks you questions about a case and you just take it directly from the police report. Mm-hmm. Now the difficult part is the actors and all the recreation teams that's done in Knoxville. My part is actually done here, and some of the witnesses and victims and reporters and people that were involved in Shreveport were all done here. Right. But the actors and the reenactments are in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I got a chance to see that. That's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah. That's a piece of snippet for you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they put all these stories together. I basically tell the story of what happened, and they kind of go back and forth between my narration and the actual reenactment. So it's pretty cool. Everybody says that it's pretty seamless between me and the actor John Nicholson who plays me.
Yes.
And people say we look alike. I personally don't see it, but
it's the bald head.
Yeah, he's a really good-looking guy. He's a pretty boy, so I don't see that. But so he's really good, and I think it helped that he and I were friends. When I got introduced to him when he auditioned, we talked at the phone, and it was almost as if they were it's a similar personality.
That connection was there.
Yeah. So we actually hang out. So when I'm in LA, I go see him, and then he came down to Shreveport for our Black History Parade. So he's good guy.
So do you guys get mistaken for twins?
You know what? People always say that. Like, is that your brother? Is that I have an aunt that actually asked me. She says, "God, he looks so much like you."
Oh my goodness! Wow. So it seems like it was meant to be for this all to fall in place.
Oh yeah. It's there are a lot of things that you can kind of predict or want to happen, but I think some things are in God's plan, and the reality for me is it gives me a chance to, my mother's story. But she got killed in '69. Nobody knew her, and now she's immortalized. And same with Shreveport. There are so many victims that nobody would have known otherwise.
Exactly.
That's probably the most incredible part. Somebody from Bangladesh saying, they're praying for a family in Shreveport. It's pretty overwhelming.
Since you are in the hot seat, we have to ask a tough question, keep you on your toes. What is your most memorable case of all? I think you worked in detective homicide for 14 years. The most memorable one.
It'd have to be it was a murder of a young child, and it was memorable. I mean, and the fact that it just brought everything together. I think at that point I got to a maturity in my career where I realized that murder was a very personal crime. Murder was something that, like there are all these ways around, will drugs create murder or domestic violence? The reality is that it's always somebody that loses control. They have this personal crisis that they feel like it's like an adult temper tantrum, and the only thing they can think of is to kill somebody. But this was a kid, and I think when I got done with this entire complex investigation, I realized that he was just mad at his girlfriend because she went out to a club.
Wow.
And that's usually the case in those murders. I mean, if somebody gets into a drug dispute, well, this guy didn't like the way this guy talked to him or looked at him. It's some sort of personal crisis. And but that case was memorable on so many different levels. I have a son, and the day of the autopsy of the child, it was really crazy because I was at the hospital and my son was being born.
Oh, wow.
And I had to run out because the coroner called, and when I went there, of course there's an autopsy of this child, and then I go back to the hospital and I cut the umbilical cord on my son.
Oh my goodness.
And it was kind of one of those days that made you say, wow. So it was pretty amazing. So that's why it just you see it, you see mortality on all sorts of levels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it seems like you're well known in Shreveport Police Department, so you always got a confession. How did you do that?
Well, I think it's we're trained to interview and interrogate people.
Right.
And one of the big things that we look for is body language. And early on, I kind of figured that they look at yours too. And when people feel you're being judgmental, or you're out to get them, or you don't really want to hear their side of the story, you're trying to close the case, they kind of see that where you're, kind of detached and maybe an adversary. But like I said, murder's personal. When somebody can relate to you and you can relate to them, then it works. And I think that's why it worked. I mean, because I didn't have any personal interest in the case, and I really wanted to know what happened. And working cases, homicide especially, it's not necessarily to arrest somebody, put somebody in jail. It's to find out what happened. And,
exactly.
And that comes back from my 3 years old when my mother got killed. I never knew the full story, and I think that had more of a negative effect on me than actually somebody being punished for it. What happened, And I think when you meet somebody or interview somebody or interrogate somebody, you're taking that route, then it's going to be positive for anybody.
It seems like the work that you've done is it like a healing?
Yeah.
Is it healing for you since you didn't know her and just she was taken from you at such a young age?
Yeah, it's really therapeutic, and I say that because Scripture tells us that God gives us comfort, right? Yeah. And with that comfort, we're able to comfort somebody else. And I think that once I figured that out, it's in police work and in the military, when someone's killed in the line of duty, we have this person paid the ultimate sacrifice or made the ultimate sacrifice, right? So I kind of apply that. It's like my mother's murder, as tragic as it was, it did so much for so many other people. And when I look at it on that plane, it's like, man, there are so many people in Shreveport, this Shreveport alone, that I was able to relate to and help in some way. And then when it kind of branches off to all over the world, I mean, like 200 countries, it's like, my mother's death wasn't in vain, and the way she died wasn't. So I think that's probably my perception on it, I guess.
Switching gears now, you are the author of 2 books as well. I mean, wow. Yeah. Talk about that for me.
Well, the first book was, I wrote that out of pure frustration, and I'd gotten to a point where my daughter was growing up, and I was a single guy, and my daughter lived somewhere else, and after my ex-wife and I split, and I started getting this realistic view of all the failed relationships I had, and I wanted my daughter to understand the pitfalls, and it was a very raw book. I wrote it while working an extra job on my phone, right? So it was really, really raw, but it was basically designed to inform girls like my daughter that this guy says this, it doesn't necessarily mean that. And if this guy says he cares about this, he really doesn't. And, and it's just all these little blunt tidbits of information that I think only a father's going to tell his daughter because nobody else will. Right.
Well, we want you to hold that thought because I know that you've done lots of work with domestic violence here in the Shreveport area. So hold that thought for me. Speaking of that, and we're going to pay some bills here. We'll be right back after these commercial breaks. Stay with us.
Since 1985, J&S Electronics has served the architects with superior electronics from transistors, resistors, and fuses. We carry HDMI cables and a wide selection of AV cables and connectors. We also have a large supply of batteries and tools to handle your projects. Need Cat 6 or CCTV systems? Call us at 318-631-8675 or come see us today at 6437 Greenwood Road.
Murder and me, we go way back. When I was a child, murder took my mother. Years later, it came for my brother. That's when I found my mission in life. Every case I worked, I solved. Every case I solved, I got a confession. I'm Detective Rod Demery. I didn't choose murder. Murder chose me.
Hey everybody, we're so excited you're here with us in the hot seat. We have Rod Demery here in the hot seat, former Shreveport police detective and host of his own show, Murder Chose Me. Hey, welcome back to the hot seat.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for being with us. You are in the hot seat. So you were talking about you wrote a book for your daughter.
Right.
But you're also an advocate for domestic violence victims. It seems.
Yeah, it's just something that I've done like my entire career.
Yeah.
It's just something I always volunteer for, and again, it goes back because my mother was a victim of domestic violence. That's when the murder took place in the first place. But I don't know. It's just something I've always been interested in, and I always went to the shelters. And, it's just that helpless situation somebody's in. I guess that's just the police.
It just drove you to it, rather.
Yeah, it's the police in me. It's like puppies and defenseless people and old people. It's like I guess because they're the only people who like police.
We all like the police department. So talk about Louisiana has one of the highest domestic violence rates in the country. Why do you think that is?
I think it has a lot to do with education, and I think it has a lot to do with culture. It's back in my mother's day, a woman was a man's property. I mean, it's just the way it was, and there's always that it's deep rooted in that social role of a man and a woman, and I don't know that people can really get over it. And the other thing is that most women are starting to excel, educationally since the '60s to where they're sometimes smarter than the person they're with.
Yeah.
And if he can't relate to her, I guess he has to resort to brute force. I mean, that's just my opinion, though.
Yeah.
But it's just a power control thing, and I think it's culturally based. I think it's just traditional throughout the country, and it's. I was at a domestic violence seminar the other week, and they were talking about that, and they're talking about the roadblocks that the victims run into, whether it be with the clergy, the police. Well, the reality is that everything is still male dominated, and some of those people beat their wives, so they can relate to another wife beater. So it's, I think it's the education though, and I think people are starting to become more aware of it, and that. Once something's that's been hidden is exposed, it just kind of starts to die.
I know working in Washita Parish, and hopefully it's the same way with Caddo Parish, the Sheriff's Department, it was zero tolerance policy for domestic violence. They had so many different arrest reports when it related to domestic violence. Do you think it's the same here in Caddo Parish?
Oh yeah, it's zero tolerance in Caddo Parish, and I think the DA's office, the police department, they should all be committed for that. City courts, because it's not really tolerated. I mean, it's come a long way, and I was on SP for 18 years, and I've seen how it's progressed, and that's what matters. I mean, there needs to be some sort of outreach and some sort of communication and some sort of collaboration between people, because some people can't get out of those situations.
Yeah, sadly. Back to Murder Chose Me. So people around the world, as we were talking about, sees the Shreveport area and just what you've done through your eyes. What are some of the things that people will be surprised about to see or to learn about the Shreveport area that they may not have known otherwise before this show?
I think everybody thinks that Louisiana is New Orleans.
Yes.
Because everywhere I go, it's like, oh, you're from New Orleans. It's just but there's an entirely different culture in Shreveport.
Yeah.
And, there's some of the architecture and some of the B-roll shots that they do. It's really a beautiful place, and I think that's really attractive to people. People in Los Angeles are not used to, all the greenery and beautiful streams and that charm. I mean, the South always had a charm.
Yeah.
So I think those people are just not aware of how what a little hidden gem it is.
Yeah. So are you getting your show? Is going to start actually this week. The new season. It starts this week.
Yeah. Wednesday, and I'm pretty excited about it. We've been doing a lot of press on it, so there's little mini press tours, LA and New York, which is always fun. Yeah. But I'm interested to see how it's going to be received. I think it's good. But I'm biased.
Hey, we are cheering for you here in Shreveport, and we thank you for your work for 18 years, keeping Shreveport citizens safe. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for being in the hot seat. Hold that thought for us. We're going to go to commercial break, and we'll be right back after this, so stay with us, guys.
Special times or dinner time. It's all about the glass. Libby Factory Outlet. Glasses for every occasion.
Since 1985, J&S Electronics has served the architects with superior electronics from transistors, resistors, and fuses. We carry HDMI cables and a wide selection of AV cables and connectors. We also have a large supply of batteries and tools to handle your projects. Need Cat 6 or CCTV systems? Call us at 318-631-8675 or come see us today at 6437 Greenwood Road.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Hot Seat. We have been talking with Rod Demery, former Shreveport Police detective and host of his show, Murder Chose Me. Welcome back to the Hot Seat.
Thank you.
All right, so I'd like to know, what would you like for people to take out of you? You're in the second season coming up this week, actually. When this airs, I guess they would have already seen the first show. It's going to air on Sunday. This is Sunday, rather. But what would you like for people to take from your show or learn more than anything?
That is probably a collaborative effort between the community, the police, and people caring about each other. That's always a form of success, and I don't know that people really realize that. There's some things that people think are hugely overwhelming. They want to change all these big issues that are going on, but I think the reality is that they just kind of look out for their neighbor. That's what it all boils down to. And that pain is universal. Everybody can feel it. So.
Good advice there. Now, bringing it back to Shreveport, because you worked in Shreveport for so long, even now, I'm sure you're connected with the police department.
Oh, yeah.
If a person witnesses a crime or shooting, what do you suggest they do?
I think the first thing they should do is realize that they're responsible for their neighbor.
Wow.
And realize that it could visit them just like it did the other person. And I hear all kinds of issues on why people don't like to talk or whatever, or reluctant to talk.
Exactly.
I just got to stop that. I mean, people allow what they want to happen. The flip side of the coin is that it's not totally their responsibility either.
Yeah.
Police have to go out and find it.
Yeah.
But I think once that relationship is kind of formed, and not necessarily, it doesn't even have to be a relationship where it's friendly at first, it's respectful. Yeah. And find somebody, and everybody knows somebody on the police department. Find somebody you can trust. Yeah. And I've seen a lot of that. Somebody knows somebody in the police department, they tell somebody, and they'll bring that information to maybe whoever's working the case. So I think basic is just looking out for each other.
Yeah. All right, so Shreveport is going to be broadcast across the world in some of those cases.
Yeah. It's
Did you ever think this was going to happen?
No, not in a million years. You know, it's I worked and I never really thought that would happen. But it's pretty interesting. And being out now, I talk to police officers and detectives from everywhere. You know, Baltimore or Philly or New York, and we all are exactly the same in our thought process. And you know, for me, it's just telling stories. You know, it's getting it out there. And I would have never thought that would have happened.
Yeah. What's your take on a murder? You said that a lot of the times the suspect knows the victim. Is that right?
Oh yeah, always. You know, the only time someone kills somebody they don't know or somebody that's not in their circle is, you know, it's a hired hitman or a psychopathic, you know, serial killer or something. But you know, murder is very personal. People kill people that they know. And you know, it's funny because I worked armed robbery for a while, and armed robbery was so much more difficult than homicide because. You know, why does somebody rob a convenience store? You know, they were open. You know,
they needed some money.
Right.
They need some bread.
But if you see somebody who's been shot, stabbed, or whatever, it's like somebody had a problem. Yeah. And you know, you work it kind of as a, you know, it's victimology. You know, if you study your victim, you're going to find out who did it. It's just it's pretty interesting. It was fascinating work. That's why I couldn't leave it. So.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that you finally solved your mother's murder case. What was that like for you?
You know,
wow.
You know, that was really different because you know I had heard that my mother was killed in a burglary and some other stuff. And my grandparents didn't tell me a lot, but I don't know. I just decided to go to where she was killed, and I started pulling police reports and autopsy reports, and I put the murder together. I found some of the witnesses who were living during the time, and, you know, and I found the guy who killed her, and I videotaped and I interviewed him, and yeah, it was different. You know, we actually our season finale last year was that case, but you know, I guess it did a couple of things. One, it made me realize that, you know, I had the answers that I was looking for, and it confirmed some stuff that I already suspected. The other thing is that when you see somebody who's had someone that was killed, you know, my mother, sister, brother, whatever, and there hasn't been any resolve, you know, no one's been arrested or whatever. Well, it's 40 years for me. I just, I think it renews that hope that, you know, because I got cards and emails from a lot of people on that episode saying, you know, there's still hope. You know? You know, and some people it's only been 5 years, you know, and they're broken, and some people 10, but you know, for me it was 40 years. So whatever's done in the dark eventually comes to light.
And do you recommend the crime victim's family, you know, if it's been 40 years or 30 years, do you recommend that they try to do their own detective work to try to solve some of these unsolved crimes?
I think if that's what they need for, you know, their own peace. But I think the biggest thing is they have to forgive whoever it is. And you know, it sounds like so trite, like
like that seems harder.
You know, but
do.
the reality is that I said you can forgive them, but you don't have to like them. You know, you don't have to wish them well. I mean, it's for you actually, because you know, the only person who's going to suffer for it is you. I mean, and if
that seems really hard. If you say, you know, forgive that person. You have
to, and you have to, you know, and you know, if you have any spiritual base about you, you'll realize that you're supposed to, and it's not because you have to like them, but you know, I had the unique opportunity to speak to a lot of different crime victims, but I think the one that was most significant was after the show aired, the first season, I was getting emails and messages, and you know, I never returned most of them, but for whatever reason I was drawn to this number. I called this girl. She was 27 years old, and she said she had a 4-year-old daughter, and her father was killed at the age of 3, and you know, she could relate to me. And I told her, I said, the biggest thing you can do is just be there for your daughter. Well, turns out she's the daughter of the man that my brother killed. So, you know, that's a God thing, you know. But my advice to her is that, you know, it's not about my brother. It's not about, you know, what he'd done. It's about her. You know, she's got a 4-year-old daughter. And just like I saw my grandmother grieving, she needs to figure out a way to make peace with that, because my brother or any other suspect can't continue to victimize generations. So it's forgiveness is I think it's, you know, it's oversimplified, but it's something that you got to do for you, because if not, you're probably gonna go insane. And most people that love you are gonna feel the effects.
Yeah, exactly.
That's with anything, not just murder. So.
domestic violence or whatever.
Oh yeah, breakups, divorce, and you see these wonderful people that can't start their life over because they're still stuck on something that happened in the past. You gotta let it go. You don't have to like them.
Now, will you get married? You are in the hot seat, so will you find love again?
I'm like 52 now, and I would love for that if that's in God's plan. But I'm kind of good. It's obviously everybody wants something to share. You want to share your life and your happiness and success and peace with somebody, but gosh, I don't know. If that's God's plan, then I definitely. But it's not a goal.
We usually have Lynn Vance from the Lynn Vance Show on, and I joke with her about finding love, at the prison down the street. Prison love.
Yeah.
But, so you said you watched your grandmother grieving. Did she ever share with you, what have you learned about your mother? What was your mother like?
My mother was really feisty. She was into music. She was really smart. She's a pianist. She played the piano. Recently I got her school records from down in Campy, and I got the chance to get a couple of her autobiographies that she wrote when she was in 9th grade, and they're handwritten. So I got a little more insight. I was checking out her handwriting and how neat and OCD it was. So I see a lot of my traits, and she wanted to be a nurse, and she had this world view of, she visited New Mexico when my grandfather was out there, and she
Which is where you're from,
yeah. She contrasted the difference between that and the Jim Crow South, and she was in 9th grade at the time. So, the show has brought a lot, as far as, me knowing what type of person my mother was and what type of person. I think it's the biggest struggle for anybody who's lost anyone. That close to them is that you have an identity struggle. Because you really kind of like this person, kind of like that person, but you really want to know where you get these little pieces from. And I saw a lot of my brother, and it's just it's pretty interesting.
Wow, that's really deep.
Yeah.
So basically, any surprises that we can expect in this second season? One of the shows, people talk a lot about snitches and people that don't talk to the police. I think they're going to find out that that's a myth. Really?
Yeah, because they're going to see how it really happens. How people really just honor among thieves. Telling each other and everybody else. And I think people are going to realize that good people are eventually going to have to rise up against the bad people, and all that stuff is just mythical.
Absolutely. All right, Rod Demery, and so forgiveness brought you full circle to where you are now with your television show and the author of 2 books. So we thank you so much for sitting in the hot seat with us. And you guys, think about forgiving somebody in your life. Take a moment to forgive. And I'm Crystal Whitman, and you are watching The Hot Seat. We'll see you back here next week.